Hey guys, don't. Hey, what's going on? It's me, Jay, here to talk about more music news. A sad, tragic day in the history of music because Michael Jackson's estate has been sold to Sony Music Group for $600 million. And like I said, this is a sad day in music because considering the history of Michael Jackson and Sony Music. Back in the early 2000s, he had gone on a protest and actually sued Sony Music Group over the rights to his music because they weren't giving him the specific royalties that he was owed. And he actually accused, thank you, Lisa, he actually accused the music group of being uh, racist and not paying several of their music artists. You know, so this is like selling out to the man, if you will. This is basically selling out to the man. Now this leads to a lot of questions that I have as a moonwalker and a Michael Jackson fan. Namely, was he murdered? And was the murder planned by those in the music industry? There's always been a conspiracy theory since his passing in 2009 because Conrad Murray did work for his touring group and it wasn't his official doctor. And plus, the amount of propofol that Conrad Murray had given to Michael was a lethal dose. And of course, we know that Conrad Murray, years later, actually went to jail for the murder of Michael Jackson. So it's possible because we know that Prince as well had legal battles with several record companies to the point where during the 1990s, Prince had to actually change his name to a symbol. That's why he became the artist formerly known as Prince, because to escape the copyright infringements of the record labels. Also, Prince couldn't find you couldn't ever find Prince's music on YouTube for that specific reason. He didn't want people, and this was Warner Brothers that he was having the issue with. He didn't want people to access his music for free at his expense. Because, like we talk about in a lot of other videos, oftentimes music artists will be taken advantage of, taken for a ride, because they don't know the business of the music business. Now, in Michael Jackson's case, when his famous producer from Epic Records, Walter Yetnikoff, was still alive, he passed away a couple of years ago. That would have never happened with Michael. He was very shrewd in his business dealings with Michael, and he was actually responsible for Michael recuperating a lot of his assets back after Michael's death. Most of Michael's money losses did not come from his losing of his royalties, but instead the massive payouts that he had to make to individuals extorting him specifically for those allegations, as we talked about in other videos. But other music artists were not so lucky. They did not have the kind of representation like Michael had, and they did get taken advantage of, as we know. We know famously with TLC, this was the case with them when they were signed to LaFace. They were taken advantage of, and a lot of their assets stolen. But in 2016, uh, the estate did purchase 50% of the assets from ATV Sony, but apparently now the deal has gone up and it's been sold back to them. So, like I said, this is a very messed up situation. The ones I really blame is his family. You know what I mean? Because they're the ones in charge of his estate since his passing. And why they think they could sow his legacy down the river is beyond me. And remember, Michael's estate has not only his music, but the music of several other musical artists, such as Elvis Presley, the Beatles, and others. Others that he had acquired to and purchased over throughout the years. So on this day, Super Bowl Sunday, that we celebrate the very first individual to popularize the concept of the halftime show in 1993, it's kind of a sad day. You know, life can be very poetic in a certain sense, and very tragic. Sony has also purchased a lot of Latin EMI, so that means they own most of Selena's catalog as well. And they've also acquired, other artists such as Ron Perry, um, Barry Weiss, and Matt Picunis, according uh, to this article. So they're really a juggernaut. Whereas they're not a juggernaut in music, I mean, in movies anymore, because of remember the Sony leak in 2014 with that movie, The Interview, where basically the Korean government, the North Korean government hacked into the Sony systems. I think that was 2014. Yeah, that was 2014. It was the Sony hack in 2014 surrounding that movie, The Interview. And their movie company failed with the original Spider-Man uh, movies before they actually sold it to Marvel. Their music, uh, their music acquisitions have been robust, as we've seen with Disney and other corporate entities, and even with Endeavor forming TKO Holdings with the acquisition of both UFC in 2016 and WWE in 2023. These companies are becoming bigger and bigger and bigger, and they're becoming bigger and bigger conglomerates. And these companies are basically the ones dictating our public policy. So basically, they're owning everybody's shit. You know what I mean? But for Michael Jackson, this is, like I said, particularly tragic because he protested against discrimination against Sony, because Sony did not originally. The thing was, in 2001 when his album Invincible came out, Sony didn't really promote it, and Michael felt that was the main reason why the Invincible album didn't do well, and the Invincible album basically flopped. That was Michael Jackson's only flop, really, in the history of his musical catalog. He had Off the Wall in 1979, Thriller in 1982, Bad in 1987, Dangerous in 1991, um, Love in the Dance Floor in 1997, and um, Invincible in 2001. And his really only flop was 2001. And Rock With You was on there. Butterflies with the Eve collaboration was on there, and it should have did a lot better than what it did. But unfortunately, it did not do well because it wasn't really promoted by Sony. And a History album in 1995. I forgot about that one. Um, and that's why he felt they weren't giving him the right treatment. Now, whether or not that was the real truth, I don't know. And he also came out against Tommy Mottola, and we know the time Mottola was a despot because one of the reasons Mariah Carey got pushed in the early '90s was because she married Tommy Mottola. Tommy Mottola at that time was working in Tommy Boy, but they switched over to Sony years later. So, yeah, it's just really fucked up, man. Hopefully, Michael's state can recuperate some of his assets, and they'll fight for his assets and his catalog and try to get it back independently because Michael was one of those artists that really fought for the rights of the artist. I mean, granted, people that are Beatles fans, especially, they always say, "Well, it's really fucked up how he did Paul McCartney," because we know the story. Uh, Paul McCartney was talking to him about buying Buddy Holly's catalog, right? And Buddy Holly, and then Michael was like, "You can really do that? Purchase another artist's catalog." And then he went behind Paul McCartney's back and purchased the Beatles catalog, you know. And then he went on to purchase several other catalogs from other musical artists. You know what I mean? Even Eminem. Notoriously, there's an article floating around. Yeah, they bought it at a discount. Lisa, that's absolutely right. His musical assets were worth 1.2 billion. So they bought it at a real cheap discount. Notoriously, like I was saying, he had a beef with Eminem in the early 2000s. Uh, Remember when Eminem said that he said Eminem said it, and I quote, "Just lose it." That was the name of the song. He said, "I done touched on everything but little boys," and that's not a stab at Michael. And during the video, he made fun of Michael Jackson, MC Hammer, and Vanilla Ice, right? And Michael, of course, he took that personal, right? This was like 2003 or like 2003, 4, 5, the early 2000s. Because I remember him talking about it with Geraldo in 2004. And notoriously he purchased Eminem's musical catalog. So Michael never came at people personally, but he would come at them professionally. He's like, "Okay, that's how you want to do me. That's how I'll do you, and I'll buy up all your shit. So even when you put out your own records, I'll make money off it." So that he went around doing a lot of that, and that made him a very powerful man in the music business. And as a black man in the music business, a business that is notoriously discriminatory against African American artists and tried to keep them down for so long, that was a particular offense to the people in the music business. So um, I'm sure if Michael was still alive, he'd be fighting for himself and others. But unfortunately, the people that are in charge of his estate, his family, never really give two fucks about him anyway. You know what I mean? They just use him for his bread anyway. Um, but yeah, that's pretty much it. Guys, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Hit the bell button to see when my next video is coming out. Thank you, Lisa, for contributing.